Hi there. My name is Jason Reese, and I was asked to share my testimony. I'm honored to be able to do so. Um, my testimony is a testimony of addiction, severe substance abuse, grief, loss, but it's also a story of restoration and redemption. Um, I was born in 1977 here in Guthrie, Oklahoma. I uh, I went to school throughout here, and this is where I currently reside, and I own a business here in town. Graduated Guthrie High School in 1995. Didn't really know what I wanted to do with my life at that time. I ended up getting a job. I applied for a job about 6 months after I graduated high school at Atkins Furniture here in town, and that job changed my life in many areas. I grew up in high school. Us kids, we drank on the weekends. It wasn't a have to, but at an early age, I didn't drink for moderation. If we were going out drinking, it was I shouldn't say this, but it's almost like that I took pride in being able to outdrink you. It was always drinking until blackout. I continued the drinking on the weekends, and from 1996 to about 2002, it was pretty much daily marijuana use as well. Now I did smoke marijuana for probably on and off for 10 years, but it was pretty consistent in those 10 years. I met my wife, Marcia Reese, in 1999. Um, she had two kids from a prior marriage, so I got a 3-in-1 deal. I knew the first date we went on, she was going to be my wife, and she is my absolute world. I'll fast forward to 2007. At the furniture store, we sold pianos as well, and that required us moving pianos to and from the store and wherever we were delivering them. We were taking a piano up some stairs. It was October of 2007, and I was always a strong guy, and we weren't professional piano movers, so the only way we knew to do it going upstairs was pick it up, go one step at a time, and all that. We were 3 stairs from the top, and we were picking it up, and something popped in my back. And I'll never forget that. I don't really like to use the word paralyzed, but I couldn't move, and I knew something was severely wrong. Somehow we got the piano up there, and I went to the doctor immediately after that, and that was the first time I was introduced to opiates. I was prescribed 30 Loratab and 30 Flexeril. I took maybe 6 or 8 of those Loratabs over the course of the next 2 or 3 days, and a couple of those muscle relaxers, and the back pain subsided. Ended up flushing them. Well, this cycle repeated itself on and off over the next 2 years. One evening, late 2008, the wife and I we go out to eat, and not thinking. When we go out to eat, I had taken a couple of pain pills for some back injury. Well, when we get to the restaurant, I end up having a glass of wine. Well, what that did, combining the two, 30 minutes after I drank that glass of wine, that how it intensified the effect. As sad as it is to say it, that feeling ran my life for the next 7 years. January of '09, 6 months before we close the furniture store down, I deliver a washer and dryer, and I'm coming back, and it's 8 o'clock at night, and I get pulled over, and I'm intoxicated, and I end up getting my first driving under the influence charge. I go in, and I've never been in jail before, so I bond out real quick, and that shakes me, but it doesn't shake me like it should, and I continue with this substance abuse. And at this point in time, I'm getting prescribed 150 Loratab and 150 Soma, which is a muscle relaxer. And at this point in time, about halfway through, we're let's say I'm getting him prescribed on the 20th, but the 5th or 6th of the month, I was running out. So I was street shopping too. So I was getting that prescription filled. My life revolved around that 20th date when I knew my prescription was going to be filled. 2012, at the end of February 2012, I ended up hitting a mailbox in our old neighborhood. But that was irrelevant to me that I hit a mailbox. I had to get to the store and get some alcohol to wash these opiates down. I drive back and there's a policeman up the street where I hit the mailbox, and it's a policeman that I happen to know. So I hurry up, and because I've got pills on my person, and I've been drinking and using all day long. Well, I get out of the car and I see him running down there to the house, and I run in the house real quick, and he follows me in. And I go sit in the chair because I know that if he sees me standing up, I'm going to get a DUI. And when I fall down in the chair, about 40 pills fall out of my pocket, and I get my second DUI. February 25th, I get out of jail for my second DUI. I was just in there processed probably 10 or 12 hours. And I get out, and my wife says, you're either going to go to rehab or you are going to, I'm going to file for divorce. Well, that was an easy option. So I ended up getting on a plane going to Palm Beach, Florida, March 1st of 2012. I go over there to save my marriage is why I go over there for. I don't go over there for me. I go over there because I was given an ultimatum. March 31st, I land back here at Will Rogers. April 1st. And I'll never forget when I got off the plane and I walked and I see our Acadia sitting there, and it's my wife. I never forget. I knew deep down, I knew that I was done drinking and using opiates. I just remember hugging her, and I haven't seen her in a month, and I've never been away from my kids in more than a day. And I was done, and I did well. I did real well for probably about a year. Well, the summer of 2013, we're out at the golf course, and the beer cart girl's driving around. Well, at this point in time, I'm strong enough to have a beer and just be able to do it in moderation and just have fun out here. I ended up ordering 2 beers on the golf course. Did great out there until I came home. What that did in my head, I realized how sick I was at this moment, that I was still sick. I was sober for a year, but I was a dry drunk or a dry addict. I ended up calling the person where I was getting my pills from, and that night I ended up scoring about 200 pills, and my life really starts to spiral out of control. I'll fast forward a year and a half or so. It was a very, very, very dark time. December 3rd, 2014, I dropped my son off at school, 7:30 in the morning. And as I leave Fogarty School and I get up by Napa, I end up rear-ended a tractor trailer. I remember getting out, and I just remember being frustrated. I was like, I couldn't believe what I had done. And an officer here in town pulled up and said, we're going to give you a sobriety test. And I was so angry at the officer, an officer that I'm really good friends with right now. I was angry that he thought I was intoxicated at 7:30 in the morning. I was not intoxicated at that time. So I told him to he gave me a sobriety test. And of course I thought I passed it because I wasn't under the influence. And he told me to put my hands behind my back. I remember how angry I was. I was extremely angry. And I said, you take me up to the hospital, you draw my blood because I'm not intoxicated. I remember I couldn't get over that guilt and shame from that third DUI. And it led me to a very, very, very dark place. A little bit before Christmas, December of 2014, I can recall wanting to go to the store that evening because I didn't take an opiate without washing them down with alcohol. And I remember my wife being on her knees and grabbing my hand, and she said, you can't continue to do this to our family. And I remember looking at her and seeing her so hurt. I was so selfish in that moment. I just remember kind of forcefully getting away from her. And I said, you know what? You do what you have to do. I'm not doing anything wrong. That night was when I lost my wife. I remember coming home and she didn't, after I went to the store, she didn't care. She didn't care about me anymore at that moment. She didn't care if I was coming or going. This went on for about 2 weeks. And it was like it was like I was just living there. We had no communication. There was just nothing. There was no love. I literally lost my wife. And I ended up moving out. I ended up going to my parents' house. And March 27th, 2015, I come in from a day's work, and I'd been drinking and doing what I was doing. And this is the worst moment of my life. A man pulls up in a BMW, really sharp dressed man, has a suit on, and he asks if I'm Jason Reese. I said, yes, I am. Well, he opens up that briefcase and he hands me these papers. I remember reading those papers, and it was divorce papers. She had filed for divorce. It was like the world stopped. I couldn't believe it. I mean, it was inevitable to get those papers, but I just couldn't believe it. Or that night, I would never sit here and say that I was suicidal. But what I did from that moment to over the course of the next 6 weeks, that's exactly what I was doing. I was trying to escape to a place that didn't exist. The medication wasn't working anymore, and I was trying to commit suicide. April 11th, 2015, I'm supposed to be in court for that third DUI that I got in December. And believe it or not, we were going to have, we beat it because I didn't have enough in my system to be under the influence. Supposed to be in court at 1:30, April 11th. And I get pulled over on the west side of town. This kind of tells you how sick I was. I get pulled over on the west side of town at 10:25 in the morning. I have an open container and I have 72 pills, open pills in my pocket, and they give me for my fourth DUI. Meanwhile, and through all this, in those 11 months from April of 15 to from March 14 to April of 2015, I had 13 automobile accidents. 3 of those accidents ended up being in total losses. I get out, I bond out for that fourth DUI. I remember leaving the jail and I just didn't have anything to live for. I was in financial ruin. My business was no longer a business. I just didn't have anything to live for. The next 4 weeks are very, very, very dark. May 14th, 2015 at 2 o'clock in the morning, I called my brother, and I feel like I'm having a spiritual and emotional and mental breakdown. I don't know how I can diagnose myself with that, but that's where I was at in my life. And I called Greg, my bro. I was telling him I need to be around family, that I'm falling apart. And I was falling apart. He was the guy that was always there, even though he knew I was doing wrong. He was the guy that's my only sibling. It's my older brother. And he said, come on out. I remember going out to his house, and I told him I wanted to come out there and go to sleep. Well, I went out there. I didn't go to sleep. I sit on his couch, and I was on my phone trying to find out what, at that time, my wife was doing, and I had an app where I was logging her phone. My definition of it was insanity what I was living, the way I was living. It was absolute insanity. At 6 o'clock that morning, I decided that at this point in time, I'm staying in a motel, or I'm staying in an apartment that a little old lady let me stay at, and I tell him I'm going to the apartment because I can feel my body shut down. I probably haven't slept in 72 hours. Well, I back out of his drive, and I get out on Highway 105. I remember I was exhausted. I was spiritually, emotionally, and mentally exhausted. And my body was literally shutting down. I remember rolling the windows down to let air get in there, just because I had 2 miles to drive. I'm going to make it. I get out on Highway 105, and the next thing I remember was I woke up behind the wheel, and all I can recall from this morning, May 14th, was 78 on my odometer and the cruise light set, and I hit a tree at 78. I didn't have time to react. I woke up right before I made impact. That was my 5th DUI. They hauled me down to the detention center, and I probably slept for 2 days in there. I don't remember much about those 2 days, but we're still going through a divorce. So June 1st, which happens to be my parents' anniversary, we have a divorce hearing, one of our last divorce hearings. And this tells you how healthy I was. I remember I couldn't believe that my wife was still following through with this divorce because I was incarcerated. So I was angry. I was angry at her. I was very, very angry. I go in there with my attorney and the judge there. It's a small little room, not in the courtroom, but a small little room on the side there. Her and her attorney walk in. I'll never forget it. They sit down over here, right over here, cattywampus to us. And I don't look at her initially. I don't want to look at her. But when I look at her, I want her to know how angry I am toward her. Yeah, I was really, really sick. I finally get the courage to look over at her. And when I make eye contact with her, it's like God pressed pause, and all that anger went to, my goodness, what have I done to my family? And for the first time in maybe close to a decade, I could actually see again. I could feel. Man, it was overwhelming. I feel it now. And I just cried. I cried for 10 minutes. And it wasn't, I want you to feel sorry for me cry. It was, man, I see again. I see what I've done. I remember when we got out of that hearing, them walking me down back to where I was staying in C-Pod down there. And I just remember walking in, and everybody, all the guys left me alone because they knew I was broken. And I just remember praying and praying and praying. And when I got tired of praying, I prayed more. I woke up that next morning and I start filling out these requests to staffs. I wanted to become a trustee. When you're a trustee, you're able to cook for the inmates, feel productive, and have your pride back again. You know, when you're in the back, you're sitting with 50 or 60 guys. It's loud. When you're a trustee, you're in a room full of 8. 2 days later, they make me trustee. June 12th, the day before my 38th birthday, I'm outside sweeping the front of the courthouse. And at this point in time, I'm starting to feel productive again because I'm being able to do things. I'm cooking for the inmates. I'm cleaning the courthouse, and I'm feeling like a man again. Well, as I'm sweeping that front in my county orange, I look over on Broad Street and what appears to be our Tahoe. Now, mind you, no one in my family knew that I was a trustee yet, but I see our Tahoe driving by. Now, this is my wife still, barely. I don't really want to look at her or see her. I want to, and I want to go hug her, but at this point in time, she's not too happy with me. Well, as they get perpendicular to me, I got that broom in my hand, and she slows down a little bit, and the 2 passenger windows rolled down, and it was my 2 youngest sons. There's no doubt that someone orchestrated that morning. I remember every emotion that you could possibly feel. I felt every emotion. And I was broken, and I needed that brokenness. As they turned the corner, and I couldn't see them anymore, I'm sobbing, I'm waving, I'm feeling everything you can possibly feel. When they get out of sight, I'll never forget, I threw my broom down and I walked up inside that detention center. There's a bathroom right there on the side. And I walked in that bathroom, and I locked that door, and I hit my knees, and I cried out like I had never cried out before. And I knew something special happened. I didn't know how special, but I knew something greater than myself I was in the presence of. I'm not going to sit here and say that I had an extreme amount of peace from that moment forward, but I knew something great had taken place. And it was a feeling that I wish everybody in this world can experience once. I always tell people, if you think that you've had a spiritual experience before, you've never had one, because if you've had one, it's undeniable. I remember I had to stay in there for another month or so. Part of my deal was 64 days in the county jail. I had to go to Valley Hope and rehab for 30 days, and then I was assigned to the Logan County Drug Court. I get out, I go over to Cushing, and that wife that I treated like garbage would bring my children over there to see me. That just tells you what kind of person she was. She knew how much I loved my kids. I end up getting out of rehab, and I come back and I get an apartment. And I know that my recovery has to be my number one priority. And I work my tail off on myself because I knew how sick I was. I had creditors from all across the country calling me because I had ran credit cards up. I mean, my life was insane for 8 solid years, but that last year was absolute insanity. I'm lucky, very, very lucky to be here to be able to share this. There was nights that Marsha would bring the children over to me, and there was nights that she would stay, and we were still going through a divorce, and we would get along. And those times like that were so tough for me because I knew that she could see the change. But I wanted to tell her, I mean, can't you see that something special has happened to me? And she would come over the next weekend. One night she cooked, and we got along like better than when we first met and we were dating. And I remember walking her downstairs, and she seen that I was on top of things, and I was better than ever, to be honest. And I remember I walked her down, and I walked her to her car. We weren't kissing or holding hands. We were friends. We were trying to get to know each other again. And I remember as I was walking back up the stairs, she said, "Hey," and she's crying. She said, how are you getting better? And I'm the one that feels stuck when you're the one that put us through this. And that hurt. It hurts right now saying that to you. And I didn't have no answers. She left. That I walked up those stairs of that apartment complex, and I just wanted to call her. I didn't know what to say, but it was still my wife. I wanted to reach out to her. I didn't. That night, I cried for 2 hours. Woke up the next morning and had the Bible on my chest. So I guess I fell asleep reading the Word. She came over the next weekend. This went on for 4 or 5 months. And then about 5 months after me getting back, about 7 or 8 months after me getting back, she came over. And she said, I'm stopping the divorce. It was one of the best days of my life, besides my marriage, my wedding, and my kids being born. I ended up moving back home, and we ended up selling the house that we lived in for 20 years and moving to our dream home and starting over, if you will. Bottom line is she's the real MVP in all of this. How she hung on. So I see so many people that throw away their marriages and they treat that marriage like it's just a piece of paper. And then I see this woman who I put through heck have patience that I've never witnessed, and how she didn't end up divorcing me, and she should have divorced me 2-3 years prior to that. But today our marriage is as strong as any marriage that I know. We communicate in a healthy manner. We do things. We train together. We run together. We do everything together. And trust that was broken has been restored. Our marriage has been completely restored. And now today, that same jail that housed me, where I was deathly sick, I get to go in there and try to tell people the truth. I'm the Logan County Jail chaplain down there now, and I'm so humbled to be able to do something like that, because a big majority of those men and women that are in that detention center are an alcoholic or an addict, and I don't ever want anybody to ever feel as hopeless and as broken as I was. And I'm just totally honored to be able to go in there and try to provide a little hope for some of those men. And it's what I live for. It's my purpose, and there's not a day that goes by that I don't take that for granted. That is my testimony. I appreciate you letting me share. I'm honored, I'm humbled, and I appreciate the opportunity. Thank you.